I've got a special two-parter jammed into one part for you today. My guest is Joanne Morrell, and the reason this is a two-part is that I am also featuring the interview I did with her on her podcast. I'll have links in the show notes to her podcast so you can listen to that as well. It's a fantastic show with all kinds of sage wisdom on how to best market your books and the mindset behind having a lot of success. So for some of you, this will be the second time that you've heard a little bit about my very small practical book, The Seven-Figure Marketing Mindset for Novelists. And for others of you, you don't even know I wrote this book. It's not one I speak about a whole ton because, as you'll hear in my interview with Joanne, I feel like I am adding to it and improving my knowledge all the time. And so it feels more like a living document than something that's all said and done. And there are times where I feel like you can get better information elsewhere. As far as the podcast goes, I'm really comfortable that you're getting the best information possible because of the expertise of guests like Joanne. My upcoming interview with Stephen Pressfield, I'm able to talk to people who can give you targeted, specific advice on how to market. And so I think this podcast maybe fills the role that I hoped the book would. And then lastly, stay tuned because I am now partnered with Scrivener. If you've not used it before, I'm going to have a full episode coming up on why I think you might want to give that a try. And if you like to support the podcast and help yourself at the same time, you can grab Scrivener now using the link in the show notes, and a small amount of that money will go right into my pocket so that I can increase my advertising for this podcast to find new listeners and ultimately conquer the world, because that's what I'm out here to do: conquer the world and leave no witnesses. Alrighty, let's get into my interview with Joanne Morrell.
This is TRBM Ammo Edition. If you're a published author and want to make a living writing books and selling them to avid readers, you've come to the right place. There's simply no program that's more successful at driving readers towards the books you've written. So the only thing you have to worry about is writing a great book. And the system within Ammo takes care of the rest. Thanks for listening to this conversation.
You look like something out of James Bond with that cat on your shoulder.
I feel like something out of James Bond. He spends so much time up here right now. Eventually, I'll have to shrug him off because eventually I start to, hunch a little too much, and it
Oh my
gets tiring.
gosh, that's funny. Is it cold where you are? Is that cat keeping you warm?
He does keep me warm, and it is cold. Yeah, it's we had a fairly prolonged fall actually, which was nice, but then when it got cold on Christmas Day was our first snow of the year, and since then it stayed below 30 pretty much all day, every day. So
Wow, we're in the peak of summer here. So.
Yeah, exactly. Do you get cold there though? I mean, do you see snow in your area?
Yes.
You do?
No,
Okay.
no
Okay.
snow. It does snow in parts of Australia, but yeah, not in Perth, but it does get bloody cold here because the houses they're not made to deal with like the cold. So
Yeah.
I grew up in Scotland and that's all double glazing and radiators and stuff like that.
Right.
Whereas here we've got tiles on the floor and the houses the houses are kept cold in the summer, but apart from that, yeah, it's bloody freezing when it's cold.
That's funny. That is funny. We lived in Spokane for a period of time, and I remember there they didn't even have air conditioning in a lot of the places because it's such moderate summers. And it happened to be that the first summer we lived there, they had a heat wave. It was like 102 degrees during the day, and we were just
Whoa.
dying. It wouldn't cool down at night. It was intense.
You prefer the cold then?
You know what? I prefer the heat actually, but I find it a little bit more difficult to deal with extreme heat than extreme cold. Um, like you can layer up an extreme cold, whereas there's a certain level of heat that you're just like, I can't take off any more clothes. If I don't have an air conditioner,
Mm,
I can't like prevent that and from just seeping through. So I guess
gonna
it's about,
combust.
yeah, exactly. Happy mediums. I want to apologize for
Oh,
our
you don't
two
need to. Don't be silly.
miscommunications. Well, it inconvenienced you a great deal, and I meant no disrespect by it, so I do apologize.
No, don't be silly. And I honestly am someone who believes like we were obviously meant to chat today now over those
Sure.
other times. Do you know what I mean? I had to laugh at
Yeah.
your it probably wasn't funny to you, but that your email when you were sort of, hiding in your car with your tablecloth. I could just picture that, after your book sales and you'd broken down. I was like, the poor guy.
That was a pretty bad day. I've had some interesting ones because I've done a ton of in-person events, cons, and book selling events, and that particular one was just all around was horrendous. So good
Oh,
learning experience. I was there for 9 hours. It was a 3 hour drive both ways, and
wow.
I sold like less than $100 worth of books. So I did not,
Yeah.
yeah, cover the cost of anything. But you live and learn, right?
Yeah, that's it. I know I've seen you've been putting yourself out there a bit at these things and
Yeah,
it's yeah, not something I've done yet, but I think
yeah.
you've got to try it, don't you?
Yeah, especially because I find in terms of like actual advertising, when you spend money to advertise, I've had some luck with Facebook. I've built my list and sold some books, but on the whole, I've lost money advertising on Facebook. It's really tough to figure it out.
Mm.
Whereas on the whole, with going to like events, even though I've had a couple bad ones, I'm net positive on that, and so I could indefinitely sell books in person, but I have not figured out the key to advertise online yet.
Yeah, and I think you meet people at these things as well, and make
Yes.
the connections, which is pretty important. So
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So,
fab.
with that in mind, we originally planned to do back-to-back podcasts. I know that may have changed, but I wanted to kind of plan for the conversations and see what your thought was right now. Are we just doing TRBM for the moment and see how things go in the future, or what were your thoughts for today?
I was still just gonna stick with what I'd sent you through, like for my thing for last time about your marketing book and just a quick
Perfect.
chat on that, and then
Okay.
yeah, flip it on its head, whatever you wanted to do.
Okay, sounds good. And then so we'll just stay on this channel and I'll send you the recording. Is that the easiest way to do, or how would you like to handle that?
Yeah, I don't know actually. I hadn't even thought of that. So whatever is easiest, I guess.
It's
Yeah, yeah, if that suits you.
Yeah, it's super easy. I
Yeah,
can I can send you the recording. So what and then I don't recall off the top of my head. You do like a pre-recorded intro and everything. So we can just
yeah.
say this is the TRBM part and then this is your podcast, the hybrid podcast and separate it that way. Does that sound easy enough?
Yeah, 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 absolutely. Yeah,
Okay,
whatever's easiest
perfect.
for you
Okay.
on your side. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
it's like 7 in the morning here, so I'm still like fresh wakening, like
good.
starting to like come to.
Yeah. Are you a morning person generally, or do you prefer evenings? So, like, when are you most alert and like focused?
I don't know. I honestly can't say it's one or the other. I think it just
Really?
depends.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's
I'm
unique.
that
Usually,
weirdo in between.
you are a weirdo. I was going to say, it seems to me that usually people have a pretty good feel for whether they're morning or evening people, but you kind
Yeah.
of go how the day takes you, huh?
Yeah, if I was to pick one, I'd say night, but it's just, yeah, absolutely. Now with kids, it just depends.
Yeah.
So, but yes,
Yeah.
owning
So,
weirdo.
yeah. Before kids, then, would you say that you were more like a night owl?
Oh, yeah,
Yes.
definitely.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
I've never been this morning. I'm like, well, fuck
Yeah.
off.
Yeah. For
Cool.
whatever reason, I
Mm.
am like a 5:30 a.m., 5:50 a.m. pop out of bed. My brain is as fresh as a ripe peach, and it's all
Wow.
downhill from then on. So by the end of the night, I save that for just kind of like reading and vegging because I'm not very good with the last part of the day.
And is this evening for you now? Is this about
It
8 o'clock at
is.
night now? Yeah,
Yes, yeah.
yeah.
So you're seeing the worst part of me.
Oh, well, I was just gonna say you're doing all right.
Yeah, oh, thanks.
Um, I'm a little bit nasally because I've just gotten over COVID. So,
Okay.
when you're talking, I might have to mute it to like cough my ring up or something.
Oh no. Well, I'm glad it's just a cough. The first time I had it, I lost my sense of taste and smell. It was very bizarre, and it was probably the hardest like sickness I'd had in memory. Um, but ultimately not like risky or dangerous or anything. And my wife got the vaccine. I did not. I hope that doesn't offend you, but
No.
I didn't feel I needed it, and all the research I'd seen suggested that like it was not dangerous for me not to get vaccinated. So I didn't, and because of that, I think I suffered much harder than she did when
Mm.
she got it. But both of us got it like right at the same time. It was inevitable in the size of the house we have. Like there's no quarantining from each other in this house.
Yeah. Well, we same, it sort of knocked me on my feet for the first time I had it, and like really bad fatigue as well, and it sort of lingered for
Yeah.
me for about 2 weeks, and then this time around my eldest daughter had it, and my youngest managed to avoid it, thankfully, and because she's got wheezy sort of issues as well, so I was glad.
Mm.
But the eldest was she was it was like a cold, so it wasn't that bad, and it was pretty mild for me. Started with a
Yeah.
tickly cough, and then I blew my nose the next day, and I thought, oh, well, but I just tested and it was positive. And then I did go downhill like day three, and then day four
Yeah.
was sort of in the men, but it's more just like a nasally thing. But I'm in between houses at the moment, so I'm with my parents, and
Okay.
they're older, and they've had like five jags each, so they're
Oh,
kind
no
of
kidding.
yeah, I've had like two,
Wow.
but they're sort
Okay.
of like gloating around the house because they haven't caught it. And, oh, it must be because of that. And I was like, well, maybe it's just because I've kept the kids away from you or something.
Yeah.
But I'm the one that's going in to serve. So,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But no, I got the mandatory, but I'm not topping it up or anything like that. It's one of these things now, isn't it? That we're
Yeah.
living with. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the more I've gotten used to COVID, the less like scared I am necessarily of it. I understand that it can be dangerous for a certain set of the population, but it where it originally really scared me, I think I feel at this point that it's sort of like flu 2.0 or something. It's just another bug
Yeah.
that's gonna circulate year round. So
Yeah, till the next thing,
yeah,
till the
exactly.
next plague.
I know. Yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
yeah.
I hope
I
that
know
never
it's
happens in my lifetime at least.
oh gosh, I know. Cool. All right. Well, we crack on. I've just got your short bio that I'll read out, and then just on to the questions. Which, if yeah, there wasn't many, but it's mainly just a chat around your mindset book. So,
You got it.
is
Yeah.
it? Yeah, yeah, it's cool. All right. Well, so you're already recording.
Yes,
So
I
I need
am. And
to
I'll
just pick
probably
up.
piece some of our beginning conversation into TRBM and then we can do this and then we'll switch over to TRBM when you tell
Yeah.
me we're done with yours.
Yeah, that's cool. Can I just ask, why did you remarket the podcast? You've changed your design in the and you sort of brought it down to
Yeah.
TBRM.
Yes. That's a good question. So I changed the podcast because I felt like the reluctant book marketer kind of pigeonholed me a little bit more
Right.
than I wanted to be. And I experimented with a couple different formats. So I, on my journey, always my first priority has been to sell my books. That's what I'm here on this planet to do, as far as I
Mm.
can tell, is sell my books. It's what I'm passionate about. And when I envisioned the podcast, I originally thought of it as something to help me build my brand. And I think it is. But I noticed that I was really starting to build a brand around teaching people how to market books and not necessarily sell my own books. And that was reflected in the kind of sales that I was seeing for my own books. And so I sort of took a little bit of a pivot. I rebranded to TRBM and I started doing a storytelling episode where I would actually set prompts through Twitter. It was still Twitter at that point, and they were just little story prompt questions, and people would answer them. And the answers that were most interesting to me, I would reach out and invite them to be a guest on the podcast. And we would tell a collaborative story, uh, just like improv the story. And I thought that was a lot of fun. It turned out to be difficult to sustain because people are hard to track down and get them on the podcast, as
Mm.
well as some people I discovered are not particularly well suited for improv, and some people are not particularly well suited to be on podcasts. And so I was recording a lot of episodes that I was then basically throwing into a drawer because it was like, this is not entertaining for me and it's not going to be entertaining for listeners. So I pivoted away from that and started to focus on it really is ultimately back to book marketing for the most part. I have a lot of fascination there, but I don't feel quite as pigeonholed. I can do some different things if I want to and
Mm.
talk on different topics. So uh, largely, it's still book marketing, but I like that TRBM doesn't have to mean anything. And it's a little bit
Yeah.
contrary to the notion that they talk about. Make sure that your podcast name really clearly indicates what you do. I've
Mm.
sort of eschewed that, and I'm just being vague, I guess.
No, that's really interesting, and yeah, I'll kick off because I know all these questions are coming up that I want to ask you, so I was like, I'll just start with that thing. So
Yeah.
anyway, Jody J. Sperling is a novelist, podcaster, husband, and father. He's obsessed with writing the best books and showing other authors how to make the best books bestsellers. Welcome back to the Hybrid Author Podcast, Jody.
Hey, thanks for having me again.
We're so excited to have you back on. You did appear in the show in, I think it was like October 2022 now, so we're into 2024. But for those who didn't catch that episode or haven't quite heard of you, can you tell us, or I'll tell them, how you got into writing and publishing?
Yeah, so as far as writing goes, I had the very sappy normal story that many people do is that I fell in love with a girl and thought that it would be really impressive if I was a writer, and so I started doing that. I ended up not getting with her, but I kept the writing habit, and that has been like the most nourishing thing in my life and become my purpose. And then as far as publishing goes, I went through the traditional education system, got my Master of Fine Arts in Fiction, thought that was going to be the golden ticket, that I was going to meet some kind of like editor or publisher from one of the big five. Like I was going to be with Penguin Random House and get a six-figure advance and just ride off into the sunset. I'm 4 books into a 9 book series, and every single day lately, I find myself thinking, boy, it would be great if I had some central location for all of my notes, all of my plot points, character names, family lineages, you name it. I wish it was in one place because let's be honest, the way that I am using Microsoft Word as a word processor and have 55 different documents to keep track of all of the series details that I need to access, I'm taking more time opening up files wondering, why did I name this one that? Why did I name this one that? And not getting the information I need. Enter Scrivener. You guys know that I do not advertise for things unless A, I'm using them myself, and B, I think that you could up your game, sell more books, do better marketing, and get yourself in the game better. And that is why I am now partnered with Scrivener. If you use the link in the show notes, you get a 30-day free trial, and then you can sign up as well for a discount. Click the link in the show notes to learn more. That also did not happen. And so I have published a little bit traditionally, but mostly I focus now on self-publishing. And that's just because I see that now as the most viable path to a robust career. And then I'll stop getting on my soapbox after I say that eventually I would like to publish traditionally with the right book, but for the time being, self-publishing seems to be the right way for me.
Oh, amazing. So you're obviously pumping out books with the aim to self-publish, but is there works that you're working on that this is for traditional publishing houses? That's still happening in the background or that's on the back burner?
Yeah, no, that definitely is. I have a book called Kidnapping George Clooney. It's a novel, and I will not self-publish it. It feels like a perfect fit for the traditional world, and so I will start to market that once I have it ready and in shape, and I won't settle until it gets a traditional publisher. But for everything else, it feels like self-publishing is a good fit.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Because I've got aspirations, same as you, to do both.
Yeah,
And you just have this, that this work is best suited this way, and this work is best suited that way. It's quite a fine
yeah.
line. It's quite funny. That book sounds extremely intriguing. I'll definitely be running out to buy that. Is it anything to do with George Clooney at all, or no? Is that fiction?
Yes, no, it does. So the format of that book is, and the reason I think it's good for traditional publishing is that it has a little bit more of a literary spin to it. You have a young woman who has this like fixation on the idea that mustard is the greatest condiment and that it's like not getting its day in the sun, and so she sees the Nespresso ads that George Clooney does. I think that they run more in like England than anywhere else, but he is like the point person for this coffee brand called Nespresso. So she sees these ads and decides that if he would be the ad campaign head for Mustard, he could give Mustard its due. And so she wants to go and convince him that this is what he needs to do. Takes a hitchhiking trip to Hollywood to try to convince him to do it, and it's kind of all the exploits along the way.
No, that's amazing. With George Clooney, you like copyright and stuff. Are you allowed to use his name? Do you think it'd
Yeah,
be a weird thing?
I know I did a lot of research into it. I do thankfully have a friend who's a lawyer, and basically the idea is that you say this is a work of fiction, and
Yeah.
so there's nothing in it that will reflect poorly on George Clooney. But I was a little bit scared of that at first, and I thought if I had to call a late audible for any reason, I could make it somebody else. But it feels like it loses some of the punch if it's not actually George Clooney. And so if you've ever heard of that movie Being John Malkovich, it's kind of like that.
Mm.
It's the idea that you can use a person's name, but not necessarily tie yourself to it being like that real person. So yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well, it sounds amazing. And obviously you are an absolute fiction buff, but you do have some non-fiction, and that's what we're going to
Yeah.
talk about today. Your book, The Seven-Figure Marketing Mindset for Novelists. So if you can tell us, in your opinion, why mindset in marketing and writing? Why do you think it's so important?
Okay. So first off, I want to say mindset is the really big thing. And I want to differentiate that because one thing that I think I've been rightfully asked along the way is, have you made seven figures on your writing? If not, why are you talking about this? So my answer to that is in my life marketing, I have made seven figures. And that encompasses different business adventures that I've been on, and bringing that mindset to the writing world. I have not made seven figures on my writing, and I'm fairly far away from that at this point. So it's about the mindset, and to borrow from what a lot of other people have said before, if you don't quit, you can't lose. And so that's really the cornerstone of my mindset is, keep that tenacity, keep trying, keep pushing, keep pressing. When something doesn't work, don't give up immediately, but learn how to pivot quickly when something is not a fit for you. And the longer that you endure and persist, the better you'll get at this. So that is why I think marketing mindset is so important, is people do not get to the level of success that they dream of for themselves unless they're willing to endure a lot of failure-like feelings. You haven't failed, you haven't lost, but it feels like it until you're an overnight success 10 years in the making, right?
Yeah, well, I must be on my way. I'm
Yeah,
definitely
right.
having those feelings.
Oh, me too. Me
But
too.
no, that's really well said there. And I loved the book. I love short form anyway. I just think that in this crazy busy world, like some of the big books on stuff is a bit much. So I love that
Yeah.
yours is sort of packs a punch, it's to the point. Are you able to share what some of the mindset secrets are that you put in the book?
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say too that I see this book as being kind of an evolution. I really do plan on going back in and doing a little bit, tightening up some of just the grammatical things. I think that I knew when I published it as a nonfiction that I didn't need it to look like my fiction where it was perfect. So um, the wording is probably clunky in some places. And I wanted that actually to speak to this process of like, let's not be perfectionists. Let's be getting our work out there to a degree. I have some complex feelings about that, but I'm okay saying in general, it's okay to get your work out into the world before you feel like it is the perfect statue of David or something like that. And I apologize if you have the dog in the background. Can't be helped. But
No, that's all
um,
good. Yeah, we like a bit of background noise, and
yeah,
I think it sets the ambience
yeah,
and the visualness of the person.
yeah. Okay, so and then to your question, I think right now, in my mind, the cornerstone and most important thing that I put in the book, there are many things. You said it's small and it is small, but there's a section that talks about knocking on somebody's door. This can be a little bit metaphorical in some cases, but I think it is the cornerstone of the book because if you are not willing to get out of your comfort zone and do something uh, frightening, scary, uncomfortable, loathsome, then you probably are not going to find the success that you want. And I'll tell a little anecdote that is actually breaking the fourth wall of the book. So when I published the book, I really wanted to sell a lot of copies, and one thing that I thought would work well is starting a Kickstarter. I think that Kickstarters across the world, right? Your audience will be
Oh,
familiar with Kickstarter, I assume.
yeah, yeah, the
Yeah. Okay.
term, yeah, absolutely. It's mentioned. I certainly am. It's not something I've done myself, but yeah, it's
Sure.
something
Okay.
that I'm looking to do this year. So,
Yeah, yeah. And I probably at some point will write something small on Kickstarter as well because I have learned some invaluable lessons. But so I started a Kickstarter and I did everything wrong. But I wanted to basically partner with local businesses and businesses even across the country if possible to basically get my book in the hands of college students. That was the dream for this, is that the American college education system for fine arts and writers has zero training in marketing. So you get these students who learn to write better, and some of them are really talented. But by the time they're done with a 4-year education or a 6-year education, they have zero idea how to market. So I created this Kickstarter thinking I will go to the local businesses. They can do this as a tax write-off. They can buy 5 copies that will be sent to a college of their choice. And I thought that that was a really great idea. I thought that it was thinking outside the box and it was going to work. Um, I still think it was a clever idea. I think it was too
yeah, it
clever.
sounds it. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
different.
But what ended up happening is that I was picking up the phone and I was calling local businesses and I was getting hung up on. I was getting chewed out. I was getting cursed at. I was walking into businesses with my pitch and getting like stonewalled, and people didn't want to see me, wouldn't speak to me. I got to the point, and just to give you a little bit of background, I spent the majority of my working life outside of publishing on the phone doing sales type things or in-person sales. So I'm very used to this. And it was shocking what happened because as I would get these rejections, like they piled up so hard and so fast that I felt punch drunk. And I got scared
Mm.
to make sales calls. And it was a horrible failure. My Kickstarter was a miserable, horrible failure. There got to be a point along the process where I asked my wife, like, hey, we've raised 35 of the 10,000 that I thought, 3,500 of the 10,000 that I had aimed as my goal. Um, I guess if we funded the rest ourselves, at least we would get a small amount of money and sell a small amount of books. But for one, I didn't think it was ethical. And two, it was just like, no, you know what? This is the universe, God, whatever you think of saying, great try, but this one is dead. And so I killed the project. And that was an amazing learning experience. But it was, like I said, very
Mm.
meta, breaking the fourth wall. I failed, but my mindset was still like, this isn't over. And I will say, with that caveat, I didn't pick up the phone to make any kind of sales call related to my writing for another 8 months. I was terrified. And the first time I did pick up the phone to make a sales call was like I was trembling. I was so scared. So
Oh.
yeah, the process is tough, but I do believe that that is the cornerstone, is knock on a door. And sorry, I feel like I'm not babbling, but
No,
I'm
no, no,
in the mood to talk.
it's interesting.
Yeah. So the idea of knocking on the door that I put in the 7-figure marketing mindset for novelists is you have your book ready to go. Now actually go to your neighbor, knock on their door, and ask them if they're willing to buy a copy. And the reason that I say to do that is because when you put yourself in that position to ask someone to buy your book, something really different starts to happen inside of you. It changes your mindset and makes you realize this is not just a piece of art. This is also an asset. It's an object that has value, and asking someone to buy it reminds you that it has value. And there's nothing wrong with your book having value. Imagine if Stephen King said, like, "Oh, I wrote these books to enrich the world. I never thought about making any money." It just that it shouldn't work that way. You can create art and still profit from the art that you create. So,
Absolutely. And yeah, I mean, I got into this as well because I am passionate about what I do, and writing and book form for me, that's it. But yeah, I mean, I want to do this as a job and a career. So
yeah,
yes, I do want to make money from it. And people do. Like, it's
yeah.
gone are the days where there's still that negative stigma around
Mhm.
in places, but people are like making money on it. I went to my first self-publishing online conference today. Whenever I went to online
Oh, cool.
through the Alliance of Independent Authors. And besides that, here in Australia, I'm very much a part of a traditional publishing crowd. So to meet
Mm.
these authors online, and everybody was and most of them that's what they were doing as a job, and they're all earning money and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So it was really, really refreshing to see, because a lot of the traditional publishing people here are a bit, yeah, unhappy, I guess, with the money
Yeah.
they're making, or it's quite quiet. But then you've
Yeah.
got the other end of the spectrum, and people are making a living from it. And just off what you were saying, like what I really love about this profession, as soul destroying as it can feel sometimes, and then we
Hmm.
keep sort of, I don't know if we're sadistic or something, going back for more to keep getting trod on until we sort of make it. But it's
Yeah.
that determination, I think, that you've got to have that you will get you to succeed. But I like that there is a challenge in this job too.
Yeah.
Yeah, like every day is not the same, or it's putting yourself out there for learning new skills, and yeah, just something different all the time. Because to think of a normal, I don't know, 9 to 5 desk job or
Oh,
whatever just tears me up inside, even if you've got to do that to pursue
yeah.
your book marketing or writing until you
Absolutely.
need the living you need to, that's fine. But
Yeah.
um yeah, as much as all these other aspects of like marketing scares me, because
Hmm.
especially like public speaking and all sorts of stuff. This is
Yeah.
my happy medium where I'm sort of hidden behind lots of screens and things like
Right.
that. But actually, going out this year, I'm going to a few more in-person stuff, and
Awesome.
yeah, that's people will see me, and I'm just like, oh goodness. But I'll probably enjoy it a lot more than what I'm scared of. But I like that it
Yeah.
forces you to go out and out of your comfort zone. I think
Yeah.
marketing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really surprising to me when you're talking about in person, the relationships that you can build are so much different, so much quicker too. It's something about that physical connection that deepens your connection, your relationship with a reader that it can't be yeah, it can't be under or overvalued, I guess.
Absolutely. I just like and I like talking to people, so it's fine. And I
Mhm.
like going to in-person events, and I'm quite a social person, but what I think I need to get comfortable with is just people looking at me. Like I
Yeah,
don't like really, I guess, people looking at me, and that's when you feel probably most raw and judged
yeah,
almost because that's when they're making the opinions, I suppose,
yeah. That's
over
interesting.
mannerisms or yeah,
Not
is
to get like
it?
psychological on your own podcast, but why do you think that is? Has that been like a lifelong thing for you, or is that like is there a moment where you feel like that happened?
No, not really. There's just, I think that's just been the usual, going through school, and everybody, there's like a generation that was scared of sort of public speaking, whereas I'm not sure
Sure.
what they teach in the US now, but my kids in Australia, it's like mandatory that every child has to get up through each years, and they all have to be doing
Oh,
public
that's
speaking. It's
cool.
like yeah, they've ingrained it now into the system. So when they emerge now, there's not going to be that sort of fear like what there was.
Okay.
But I've actually had positive experiences through uni, having to get up, and I did a whole presentations
Yeah.
unit. So you were forced to get up pretty much every single week. It was so
Wow.
uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But I had to get up, and I had self-published a children's fiction book in my first year at uni, and I got
Hmm.
up and spoke about that, and I was quite nervous. But rather than the fear that I sort of felt, what happened, like at the end, there was connection. People came
Yeah.
up and they were like, "Oh, I'm really excited, and I write as well." And it was like, "Oh, cool." And it was actually, I keep it in my mind because it was a positive
Yeah.
experience in the end rather than a negative
Yeah.
one. But
I'm curious. This happens for me is that anytime I've done any like formal public speaking, I get such a dose of adrenaline that when I'm finished, I don't remember anything that I said, even though I've practiced the speech. Does that happen to you at all, or do you feel like not quite as adrenaline hyped as that?
yeah, not yet. And I don't think I've had as much practice. I will have to touch base again in another year, because this
Yeah.
year is me putting myself out there a bit more with
Yeah.
chatting and all that sort of stuff, more so than behind the screen. But
Yeah.
yeah, well, if it's a terrible experience and I get adrenaline, I can just blank out the blank out the experience.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So.
So anyway, yeah, back to your marketing mindset novelist book. So how did you sit down and sort of come up with the bits that you wanted to put in?
So I wrote and wrote and wrote a lot. And then I went back over the material and I cut and cut and cut until I thought that everything that was in there, at least as a raw idea, had a lot of value. Um, you mentioned early on that shorter can be better, and I couldn't agree more, especially with a book like this. I think when you're talking about any kind of skills acquisition type of book, shorter is better. And this book probably could go from, if I were grading myself right now, I would say it's like a C plus. I think I could get it to an A with another 500 hours of work. And that's probably something that I envision doing with the book. I see it as sort of a living document evolving over time. But I wrote it with as much as I knew at the time. I wrote it to the best of my ability, what I knew. I worried less about the sentencing, which is sort of like the complete opposite of how I feel about fiction. Fiction, every single word is belabored, and it breaks my heart if someone's like, "Hey, there's a typo on page 19." I'm like, "Oh my gosh."
That's how you
But this
remembered
book,
from it.
yes, exactly. I know. This book, it was less like that. It was more, judge me on the concepts that I have. Have you encountered this kind of information before? Have you encountered it in this way? And I really wanted to pair every lesson that I tried to teach with a personal anecdote from my own life that illustrated the lesson. I thought that that was of utmost importance. And I think that that's what gives a book a little bit more life, is if you know that the person writing it has experienced what they're telling you to do. Um, because you don't want to learn from somebody who's theoretical pie in the sky. And I think,
Mm,
unfortunately, I do encounter a lot of podcasts out in the world right now where you can tell that people are not acting in good faith. In fact, a small little anecdote that bothered me to no end is there was a gentleman who was advertising on Instagram that his email system had generated, 10-figure income for him. And it was $7 to buy his intro email. And I was like, what's $7? Like I don't even think about spending $7. And so if it's a scam, at least I'll learn. But I'll buy it. I'll check it out. It was a template basically, so that you could sort of personalize it, but it would give you this format for drawing customers into your funnel, which these are words I kind of hate. Funnel, anyways. But
mm.
I bought it, and as I'm reading the intro email, there was a typo in the first sentence, and then a typo in the third sentence, and I think all told there were like 15 typos in this
Oh my
thing
gosh.
that he sent. And it was, I mean, they were embarrassing typos. And so I just sent a thing to him and I said, "Hey, after the first typo, I thought, okay, I'd like, we all make mistakes. But by the time I got to the end of this, there were so many typos. Like I circled it, I sent him a screenshot of it, and I was like, hey, you might want to think about like at least fixing this before you continue to sell it to people." And he was belligerent with me. He was so angry. I didn't even ask for a refund, but he gave me a refund. He was so belligerent, and it was awful. And I just thought there are a lot of people out there right now who understand how to market, but don't have something valuable to market to other people. They haven't taken the
Uh,
time to really distill that. Um, and so I wanted this book at least to be an antidote to that.
yeah, you don't really think about that, do you? Hey, like
Yeah.
the other end, like someone can excel in that field, marketing, but then what
Yeah.
they are marketing is like not any good. Yeah, never
Has
thought
no
of that. My
value.
goodness,
Mhm.
scary. I know. Yeah, there is sharks out there, which is um sad. It
Yeah.
is sad that people can sort of get roped in. There is a lot of podcasts popping up as well, isn't there? I know
Yeah.
at least from talking to people last year, at least three people I know are starting podcasts. So it's
Oh,
really,
wow.
really a big yeah, saturation's gonna come into that for marketing in the
Yeah.
future. I've got to say with your book, what I liked as well is how you had all the reviews and stuff on the back that kind of
Oh,
I felt
yeah.
like the book was a good marketing for yourself anyway, and also how you had like the QR codes and just it was just
Yeah.
different, like the way it was packaged as well. I thought that was pretty clever.
Thank you. Yeah, I
Mm.
wanted to leave some resources at the back of the book that were easy to use, and give you kind of more story. One of the ones in the back that I really like is Becky Robinson. Her book Reach had a really big impact on me. I love what she said. It kind of felt like, in some sense, like traditional marketing and an approach, but I also felt that she distilled some ideas in some really cool, easy to remember ways. So there are a lot of resources at the back of the book as well that I hope can help people take the adventure a little bit further.
No, that's fantastic. And I mean, you've already shared a lot of advice, but think of an author at the very beginning, of their novel marketing
Yeah.
adventure. What advice would you give them?
At the very beginning of their marketing adventure,
They've made no mistakes. They've come up against
yeah.
no failures or know what works or nothing like that. They're wet behind the ears. What would you say? Good
What,
luck.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Good luck. Do something. Probably, actually, that's true. Do something would be my basic advice, because I think that a lot of us get stuck. We have the book, it's finished, and then we hope like posting will organically drive readers to our books. Almost never works, and if it does work, it rarely works well enough for you to have a meaningful impact in your community or let alone the world. Um, but let me say it would be a little bit different depending on the kind of person. So, if you're a person who has a little bit of money, then actually my advice for someone who's even wet behind the ears is spend $5 a day for 1 week to run a Facebook ad. And if you don't know how to run a Facebook ad, just go online and YouTube is a wonderful resource. Type how to create a Facebook ad, and you can learn how to do all of the little things you need to know how to do. The reason I say that one is because next to knocking on the door, which would be another piece of advice for someone who has no money but wants to get out there, uh, spending money to advertise your book instantaneously changes your relationship with the book because every day that you lose $5, even though for most people that's not a huge big deal, um, it still hurts. It's like, okay, I could have bought a cheeseburger or something along those lines, but instead I just flushed that money down the Facebook drain. Um, and it helps you to be more tenacious and to realize that it's difficult. And I think what happens in your brain when you accept that you're not going to magically rub a genie lamp and just be famous is that you start to create a resilience mindset. And that is the number one key to success in this is building resilience.
Absolutely. Do you feel like how long do you think someone should sort of plug at something before they're like, nah, this is not working for me and pivot on to the next thing? Do you think 6 months, depending on what it is, to a year?
Yeah, that's a great question. So my Facebook advertising journey will be 1 year in February, and I've certainly lost more money than I've made. It's significant amount actually. At different points, I've been a bit more aggressive with my budget, trying to like experiment with things. And I will say the
Mm,
caveat. I talked about this in the Seven Figure Marketing Mindset for Novelists. I've talked about it on my podcast plenty. Maybe even mentioned it the first time that you and I chatted. But I have disposable income to a degree. And so I was able to be a bit more aggressive with my budget. Not everybody can. I understand that. Um,
mm,
but I say go until the pain makes you absolutely until you have to quit. And at the moment you feel like I have to quit, then go ahead and quit that thing to salvage the whole, if that makes sense. So,
yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's like the analogy I think of in the health world is the best way to have the best physical health is to do things until exhaustion. So if you're going to do push-ups until you literally can't complete another push-up. And that is physiologically the most beneficial way to go about exercise that gives you the biggest benefits in health. And I would say have that same approach to this. So you set a budget. You say right now, I am able to spend $100 a month on advertising. So then the first thing you do is if you say I'm able to spend $100 a month, then up that by 10%. So be willing to spend $110. And then if you get to the end of the month and you literally don't have anything left in the bank account and you're like, I'm going to go broke if I keep doing this, then
Mm,
stop advertising and pivot until you can go back to it and try again. There are some cases where it's just a clear sign to quit. And I think that's a little more difficult to decide when that exact moment is. I wish that I had a really clean cut way to say like quit, but generally speaking, unless you are loath to wake up, it's probably worth continuing.
yeah, yeah, no, I like that. It's hard as well, isn't it? Because it's sort of
It's
just
awful.
it's that mindset as well. Oh, but it could be
Yeah.
the next one, or the same
Yeah,
with the
exactly.
writing.
Right?
If
I
I
mean,
quit,
you're almost a gambling addict at some point, right? It feels like it at least. You're like, if I just pull this slot one more time.
Yeah, scary when you think of it that way. But yeah,
Yeah.
no, I wholeheartedly agree. I think this industry, and it's something that I do anyway, is
Mhm.
all a gut feeling. I
Yeah.
talked about before that children's fiction book that I self-published in my first year of uni before I knew sort of anything, and kind of
Yeah.
put it out without having it edited. And I had a gut feeling there, like it wasn't. I was rushing or whatever, and I did it
Mhm.
anyway. And I was just like crippled by self-doubt once I put it
Yeah.
out there. And I mean, that was a big lesson in itself. But
Mhm.
it's like an antenna now. I sort of read through things and I more consult the gut, being like, how does that feel? If there's any sort of tingling or anything, I'm just like, oh, no, it's fine. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
with that. But yeah. Well, do you plan on are you going to add any more books to this series with the marketing mindset novelist book, or are you going to just keep updating this as you grow and learn and things like that?
I definitely will update it. I will try to keep it roughly the same length. I may completely dispatch certain parts of the book if I feel like they don't age well. But yeah, what I would like to do is I would like to write a volume of about the same size once I've actually hit the seven-figure uh, income piece of it and say, this is how you do it. And really try to be as vulnerable as possible about all of the mistakes I've made along the way because I shared the Kickstarter story. I've made some boneheaded mistakes that have cost me a lot of money and a lot of pride. So I'd love to share that with the world because one thing I think is lacking right now is the vulnerability to actually talk about failure in a real, raw, and honest way. I love Joanna Penn. I love what she does. I feel like she doesn't talk enough about her own failure. You feel like she was like born a success. And I love Mark Dawson. Again, similar. He does talk a little bit about being a failure, but um, uh, it doesn't feel very raw. I think that it's one of the human characteristics that we don't want people to laugh at us. And
Yeah.
so yeah, we don't tend to be vulnerable about how the mistakes that we made and how silly we were. And so I want to do that because I think that that's important. And there's somebody out there right now who's listening to this. There's somebody out there who will listen to this, will come across my book that like this will save them from quitting because they'll be like, oh, if that guy could be so stupid and look at where he's at now, then I can do this too. And I think that that's really important and missing in the field right now.
Yeah, that's a really good mindset to have. I think, like, in terms of, say, Joanna Penn and Mark Dawson, Joanna Penn, I absolutely love her podcast. She's
Yeah.
been on mine a couple of times, and she's like an unbespoke mentor of mine,
Yes.
across the way. But I've got to say, like, her non-fiction stuff that she's putting out now that she's doing through Kickstarter is,
Mhm.
it's more. I'm not going to say authentic, but it's more personalized. So she actually
Oh yeah.
does inject a lot more of how she's feeling, like in a negative light, really, really
Yeah.
open and honestly, more
Oh,
so than our
nice.
kind of how-to
Okay.
books. Yeah. So she's
Yeah.
kind of pivoted there. And I remember one of her podcasts, she was saying that she had wished, I think in the beginning of her podcast, that she had been a bit more open about the failures and
Yeah.
stuff like that. And I think probably from like a business standing, you kind of feel like, especially what they do, you kind of
Mhm.
feel like you have to be seen to be the beacon that is
Yes.
succeeding in every aspect, because why then would people come to do what you're doing, I guess, if
Right.
you're showing any sort of signs of failure. But I'm the
Right.
same as you, like I can't it's not all coming together immediately for me, and this is
Yeah.
the real, to me, this is, well, it's the real life for most of us.
Yeah.
It might work for every, well, that's the thing though, is which is so hard because not one person I have met in the writing field, it's every single person is different. Like every single person's story, the way they publish, the way they write, it's all different. So it kind of
Yeah.
feels like there's definitely not one way, but there's one way for everyone, or a
Yeah.
couple of different ways, or whatever. So yeah, it's it's a mind
Yeah.
boggle.
It is. Yeah, you're right. There's not a perfect format for everybody. You can't like have a single book where anybody who reads it is then like, "Oh, now I know how to succeed." Like it
Mm,
yeah. I just heard this
yeah.
recently. You probably know of this, but like colognes and perfumes interact with the pheromones of the person who sprays them. I don't actually wear cologne. I don't much like it, but I just thought this was really interesting and applicable in a lot of like uh, ways. But apparently, when you spray cologne on yourself, your own pheromones change the scent. So no one person ever smells the same wearing the same cologne.
Wow, that is cool.
Hey, so
I
it's
like
like that.
that. That should become a metaphor for you for writing.
Yes, exactly. Yep. Yeah. So
Oh, no, that's interesting. Well, thank you so much, Jodie. You've
thank
shared
you.
such good insights and expertise again. Thank you. And yeah, can you tell our listeners where they can discover, the seven-figure marketing mindset and all your fiction and just generally
Yes.
you and your podcasts on and offline?
Absolutely. So the seven figure marketing mindset you can find on Facebook, Jody J. Sperling. If you even get close to spelling it right, you'll find it on Amazon. I've gone to pains to make sure I'm very findable there. So that's the easiest way to find that book. To find my fiction, go directly to my website, jodyjsperling.com. It's JODYJ. As in Paul, ERLIN as in Nancy G.com, where you can get all of my fiction, the cheaper than you can get it anywhere else. And if it's physical, I'll sign it and ship it to you anywhere in the world, no problem. And I also want to take just a quick moment to let any authors who are listening know if you are semi-successful, where you have enough reviews on Amazon, Goodreads, or anywhere else, and you're interested in getting into bookstores in the United States, I have a business called the Self-Published Author Cooperative, where we have relationships with bookstores across the states. And I'm always looking to add more authors to my stable who want their books in bookstores. This is specifically for self-published authors, and you have to have the inventory on hand so that you can ship it yourself. So it's not for everybody, but if you're that author who wants that, you can reach out to me at jodyjsperling@createcollaborate.com. And Joanne, it's probably easiest if I just send you the email address. So because Create
Mm-hmm.
Collaborate is spelled stupidly. But yeah, anybody can reach out to me if they're interested to learn more about that.
Oh yeah, no, that's really interesting. What is when you said enough reviews on Amazon and Goodreads, what's enough?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I'm working with a guy right now who has a fantastic book. I think it's really marketable. He has 111 reviews on
Wow.
Amazon.
Yeah.
So that's probably around the bottom um, of where I would look at. If somebody had a great book and 50 reviews, yes. Anything less than 50 is probably going to be a tough sell.
Yeah. Okay. No, interesting. Good to know.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again, Jodie. That was fantastic.
Yeah. Thank you. What is author marketing mastery through optimization, you ask? I'm going to tell you. It's the best way for us authors to make a living selling our books. Are you tired of hearing gurus tell you your book is only good enough to be a lead magnet for services? Are you tired of feeling like you have to be a slave to social media and then frustrated when the time you spend doesn't actually help you sell books? I was too, until I found Ammo. Ammo is the only program that reliably produces results, and it works for anyone. Is it hard work? You bet. Do you have to overcome some of your own prejudices to make Ammo work for you? Absolutely. But rather than being another program that rah-rah shish-goom-bahs tries to get you emotionally excited only to offer unclear methods, Ammo shows you how to design profitable ads step by step through a unique, highly tested and targeted formula. The founder, Steve Piper, is a data-loving, formula-driven author who escaped the kingdom of Amazon to build a platform for himself, where he sold directly to his readers and built a loyal following and millions of copies sold. With Ammo, you know who's reading your books, how to contact them, and what they want to read next. If you've always been frustrated with Amazon's wall of mystery of not knowing who's reading your books and losing 50 to 70% of your hard-earned money that you're making through sales, Ammo solves all of those problems by putting you in the driver's seat and showing you how to fulfill your books directly to your readership. Click the link in the show notes to learn more. Okay, so it occurred to me, by the way, that what I think I will do is I think I will we'll chop up that part of the interview, and I'll just post that on mine, and then we'll just roll into the next part of the conversation.
Mhm.
And I'll pitch it on my show as kind of like a hybrid podcast where they get to hear your show, and I'll market your show on my show, and then
Yeah,
tag on and uh,
we
do this
probably
part of
should
the
have
interview.
just done it like as a whole, but yeah, as I said, I haven't even given it a thought.
No, yeah,
I-
it's no worries. I like to pretend that I'm really well organized, and sometimes I'm just like I feel like things are coming at me so fast that I just make a lot of mistakes. So,
Ah,
uh,
yeah. No, I think it's better, like what you're saying, to be authentic. I honestly
mhm.
cannot be any other way. Like, I can't go out
Right,
pretending to be someone else. It's just not me. And the
yeah,
books that I've written are from lived experience, and I can't, like, again, everybody's different.
mhm.
But yeah, I can't. Yeah, I just can't. I can't do
No,
anything different or whatever. Maybe I shoot myself in the foot that way. But like you
yep,
said, it might turn it on its head when I get to eventually be where I want to be. Then people are
hmm
like, oh,
yeah. There is a guy named Alex Hermosi. I don't love everything about him, but I like a quite a darn lot about him. And his podcast is called The Game, and he says Steve Jobs and Jeff Bezos, etc. Didn't document the journey to where they are, and so he has this goal of being a billionaire, and he's like, I want to chart like the journey to get there, so that people can see what it's like on the way. And I was already doing that, but I thought he voiced it really well. That it's and I don't think my journey is to get to $1 billion. Honestly, my journey is to be like a well-known author and really share my stories with a lot of people. But yeah, I think people need to see the
$1 billion would be
mess.
nice though.
Sure. Oh yeah. I'm not going to say
I
no to
thought you were
money.
going
I'm
to
just
say I'm going to exceed that.
no. I've done a lot of thinking in this area, and I'd love to hear your thoughts too. So let's start this conversation at this point.
Mhm.
Is I, at different points in my life, have had great ambitions. Like I thought I want to be the next Stephen King, or I want to surpass Stephen King's success. And while I would love that, when I actually think about the output of energy that it takes to be Stephen King, I've thought, you know what? I would be okay if I could support my family and never worry about where their next meal is going to come from. Like, I mean, for the rest of their life, if I had that
Mm,
level of success, which is probably only $10 million, if I were going to put a money like number to it, then I would be more than happy. If I succeed beyond that, gravy. But that is kind of for me right now where I see like I want to be a $10 million author. And that sounds ludicrously ambitious to me right now. When you think of it in those terms, like energy versus like your dreams, what seems realistic to you? Like, where would you like to be? And just say, like, yeah, if I got there, I would have done more than I ever believed I could have done.
it's just kind of what you're saying. Like for me, the goal is to be able to live the lifestyle that I want, which is
Mhm.
not necessarily Stephen King's level
Yeah,
of money and success and things like that. It is pretty much just, I guess, what I live now. Like, enough that my family don't go without. I can feed
yeah,
them. Like the lights are going to stay on. We can go on holidays. We live comfortably, and anything that
yeah,
surpassed that would be incredible.
yeah,
I suppose I look at. In my mind, like when you're saying it, I don't think I'll ever get to Stephen King because I
yeah,
pivot so much
yeah.
in terms of work. I do the children's and YA fiction, I do
Mhm.
nonfiction, I've got a women's fiction coming out this year. So there's just so much that I want to do. Am I not smart because are you supposed to just follow in one genre and
Mhm.
build that up and go from there? And I think that I just jump around all over the place so much because that serves my interest. I get bored
Yeah,
you're just
yeah,
doing kind of one thing. But
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
On that note, I mean, when I started the Create Collaborate podcast, which was the very first iteration of this thing, um, I thought like this is a means to an end, and then I realized somewhere along the way, I really love making this podcast. I don't love editing it. I would love to get to a place where I could hire somebody to do the editing of it, but I love having these
Mm,
conversations. It lights me up. I wouldn't want to give it up, and that's what you made me think of is like, yes, fiction is my purpose. It's what I'm here to do. But at the same time, I can't see myself giving up podcasting to like go to the next level with the novels. I can't see myself giving up Saturdays at the beach with my family to get to the next level. And when I start to factor those things into the dream, then I realize I'm willing to sacrifice some of the size of the dream to keep some of the elements of what I already have that I already love.
No, absolutely. And I can't say I've ever been like this crazy workhorse of a person.
Yeah,
So like but yeah, you know, you want to be a fiction buff or whatever, but you are also
yeah,
all the other things. Like you said, you identify as a podcaster, you're a father. I'm also a
yeah,
mother and a podcaster, and I love being those things, and those things need our time. And you know,
yeah,
kids are only little for so long. It's important, I think,
yeah,
to kind of be around them as well. But yeah, I agree with podcasting. I started the Hybrid Author podcast as a marketing tool for myself, but it's actually serving me as a source of inspiration. And the same as
yeah.
yourself, it's kind of like the editing is oh, but then I also don't want to. I would like to pass it on to somebody else. Excuse me,
Hmm.
but I also feel like because I batch the interviews with the editing, I go back and you sort of have that like it connects you back to that conversation,
Yeah,
to be able to write up all the stuff and things like that. But yeah, and I know what you're saying. There's if I think of enjoyment in my life, I don't think I'm gonna, if
yeah,
I'm honest, you know, squash
yeah,
that to continue the writing. But I have over the years worked up, probably much like yourself, like a mechanics, I suppose, that you automatically get up and do what you've got to do and to meet
yes,
deadlines and get things done, whether it's all different hours to fit in around
yeah,
everybody else, then that's just what has to be done now. And it's like
yeah,
it's almost thought the other day it's a bit of an obsession now. Like I
yeah.
can't sort of stop doing it to get to where I want to be. But
Hmm.
yeah, if it comes at the sacrifice of the other things that are important in my life, like you said, like children and
Yep.
yeah, but things like this, then no thanks.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that the truth is that I've heard enough from the business world to know that people who have built these ludicrously successful businesses, I think including Stephen King, is that they do neglect other things. They neglect family time. They neglect seeing their children playing sports or singing in a concert or acting in a play, all the different things that are family experiences that I don't want to miss. My wife and I have had a handful of conversations where it's like, if I want to really get where I'm going, then I have to be able to have more time. And every time
Mhm.
we do that, she always figures out like, let's do this so that you can get more time. So when we first got married, I was still attending church. I was still pretty, I guess, religious. And so I didn't work on Sundays at all. And then it came to this point with kids where I was just like, I need the time on Sunday. And so we long stopped attending church. We'd long stopped doing any of that kind of stuff. And it's like I still was holding on to this idea of like not working on Sundays. And I just said to her one day, I was like, we never go and do like family stuff until noon or one. Can I just work? Like, would that offend you? Would you feel like bothered? And she's like, no, go ahead. And so ever since then, I always work from 6 to 1, 7 days a week. It's just what I do. And then during the weekdays, oftentimes I'm still working until, 6 or 7, like I am right now. And I feel really comfortable with that. Our family thrives. My kids get to see me. They feel like they get too much time with me. Um, but could I take it further? I'm not sure right now. I feel like I'm pretty close to the maximum number of hours that I'm comfortable working. And that probably has real life implications on the ceiling that I will create for myself if I'm not willing to push harder. Do you ever have any conflict in yourself about like what you're doing and where it's going to get you? Do you ever wonder like, am I working hard enough, or do I need to work harder, or do you feel an like innate sense of comfort at your output?
No, no, I'm not comfortable at all.
Yeah,
And yeah, I question myself a lot, and it always feels like I should be doing more, or I'm not doing enough, or you
yeah,
just, and I'm just feel like I'm in this race to get to where I want to be. But I feel like that's my downfall. And I've noticed in the past as well, and looking at my work process and stuff, that as a newbie sort of author, we've sort of just had a conversation, but I have sort of rushed to get to the end or to meet a deadline and stuff like that. And to the point where the work has not suffered, but it needed probably a couple more elements to it. And I've just kind of pushed on over it. And that's
Yeah.
something that I've learned along the way that I need to just slow down, be patient,
Mm.
and get the work where it needs to be before sort
Yeah.
of proceeding on. Because last year I had a goal of, it was more like an experiment to think, written my first women's fiction book, but I wanted to see
Mhm.
if I could do the rapid release thing and
Oh, sure,
experiment
sure.
with doing. Yeah, like, so I had a goal of 4 books, one every quarter, and I was going to be
Wow.
self-publishing these books and all the rest. Now, I've started out writing children's and YA fiction, which is around, I
Mhm.
think the most I've written is 50,000 words. So a
Okay.
women's fiction is,
Yeah.
78,000 words is like the smaller end. And I'm
Yeah.
more of an author that I don't, I sort of skim over the top of what I've got to say and then I have to go back and flesh it out. So
Yeah.
I don't have buckets and buckets loads of words to sort of sort out anyway. And
Yeah.
this goal, I laugh now because this goal was what? So four books, the biggest number I've ever written, and we also sold our family home,
Wow.
took the kids homeschooling, and traveled the top end of Australia in a
Oh,
caravan for the
wow.
first year. So rather than so me
I'm
thinking I'm
jealous, by the way. That sounds amazing. The
it
caravan
was
part.
an amazing
Yeah.
experience, and it's the done thing here. There's a lot of people on the road, and we met some amazing people, but I had less time than more because the kids were there all the time. We were
Yeah.
homeschooling, and you kind of think, well, because I'm not tied to a job per se, but because we were traveling, we didn't really know where we were going. All the other time was spent kind of exploring. So, out of that big goal, I'm still finishing one of the books
Yeah.
and have an
Yeah.
editor there. But I had wanted to write the end on New Year's Eve and pop a cork,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I came in with COVID, and I'm still
Oh,
plowing on. I've
no.
still just got a couple chapters left, but
Yeah.
I've learned not to. I'm not just going to rush it just to get
Yes.
to, I'm going with that gut feeling. There it is,
Yeah.
to hit deadlines and stuff. So already we're into the first week of January, and I have brought in work from last year. So I feel like I'm chasing my tail already. And we've just started,
Yeah.
2024. But I guess my point is, working, we're having, yeah, I can't be too down on myself. This is either the pace I'm at. I
Yeah.
can't sabotage the work to be anything different, even though that's what I'm trying to do. Because I feel effectively if I work faster, work harder, more money will come, more this, more
Mm.
that. But
Hmm.
I just have to go at a pace that's obviously natural to me
Yeah.
with kids and other responsibilities and all sorts of things, that's
Yeah.
all I can do, and I just have to be
Right.
okay with that, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. We hit this point for my family where I had 4 rental houses and I decided, I'm spending all this time building up this real estate portfolio that I thought of as like the patrons of the arts. They were going to be the ones that supported my arts, and then I realized like I can keep doing that, and it is a lot of fun, but I have so much less time to focus on the art and the writing. Why don't I sell the houses off, and that would give me a good 3 solid years of income where I can write and not have to worry about a W-2 or AKA like a job outside of writing. And we sold 2 of them and did about 2 years. And then I looked at the other two and I was just like, this feels wrong right now. And my wife and I talked about it, and it was like she said, you know what, the kids are old enough. I can get a job. So she went, she got a job. And again, I grew up in the traditional Christian household, and so like a man's supposed to be provider. And I felt like a lot of shame around it at first when she went back and got a job, because I was like, wow, everybody, I mean, my grandparents actually called me, Molly homemaker. And it was kind of a joke that like I was staying home while my wife was bringing in the bacon. And it was tough,
That's the
but
20th
also
century.
I know, I do know. I, I struggle with the upbringing that I had, not like actually the
Mm.
doing of it. And so I consider myself to be very much a feminist. In fact, I think like the 9 Lives of Marva DeLonghi is an exploration of feminism, obviously written by a male, but trying to really explore some of those ideas. all that to say, like the point I'm making here is that it's to get where we're going, the level of sacrifice is crazy, and I doubt sometimes whether I'm at least respecting my wife's sacrifice if she considers it a sacrifice to go back to work, like her taking one for the team. Am I putting in the time that I need to? But at the same time, like you said, now I make dinner, now I clean the house, now I do the laundry, now I
Mm,
do the dishes, now I do all of that stuff. So in some sense, I am doing like the homemaker part or the stay-at-home dad part. And I realize, there's only so much time in the day. So
yeah.
these are just challenges. I don't know if I'm going anywhere with this except to sort of reflect back to you that I understand how you feel, that like the burdens of the family, as great as they are, they do have a limiting factor on what we're able to accomplish.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people do struggle. I hate this work-life balance
Yeah.
term, but like just trying to, because not every day is scripted the same, and we get
Hmm.
life curveballs thrown at us and all sorts of things. And
Yeah.
I feel like as a newbie writer, you've got to find that skill, as I just talked about, like what my process now is like a mechanic's almost like an obsession. I just pick up and do it, and I have to do it. Whereas when I
Yeah.
first started out, it was hard to, in between all this other stuff, oh, I don't feel like it today, or something like
Yeah.
that. You get past that, and then you've got this other side of things, and I just wonder, like as you're talking, like a question that keeps coming to mind. We were talking about we wouldn't sacrifice these things to get to Stephen King level, but say where we're
Yeah.
at now, we do reach a certain level, and then there
Mhm.
is more of an expectation of
Yeah.
more of a demand for your work, or a demand for
Right.
this, and then the money is piling in, and there's this and
Yeah.
that. Then would we be like starting to
Yes.
sacrifice because
I
we've reached this new level,
yeah.
and I don't know.
I love that you took the conversation here because that was kind of like clattering around at the back of my head was the idea that what if you do hit that we'll just use the number that I threw out there. Your number probably is different than mine, but let's say you hit that $10 million author point. Well, at that point, there are an awful lot of human beings in the world who have read your books and want you to write another one. Then
Mm,
you go traditionally published, and now I no longer have to worry about finding my beta readers. I don't have to worry about all of the other stuff I did. I can send that off to the publisher. They can worry about distribution, editing, all that kind of stuff. Like they can find my audiobook readers. They can do all this stuff that I was doing. And now I have enough money that I can hire somebody to clean my house. And that's the smart choice because people are clamoring for my books. So yes, I think both of those things exist simultaneously as you're like, if you hang in long enough, then the choices you get to make reflect the success that you've had by keeping your head above water, right?
yeah, absolutely. Well, we have to talk about Jodie because that's the next step for us. So,
Yeah. Yeah,
but,
exactly.
but exactly what you said, I think just having that money to be able to delegate and pay
Yes.
off the jobs that sort of hold you back. My Christmas present to myself this year was to get a subscription for Masterclass.
Awesome.
Masterclass.
Yeah, I love
You
that.
heard
Yeah.
of
So
that?
Neil Gaiman has a course and a
Yeah.
bunch of different people. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
well,
really
it's funny
cool.
because yeah, it is, and I've watched a couple. There's some that are quite full on with lessons, but I love that the video form. But I watched Martha Stewart.
Oh, so
She's
cool.
got like yeah, she's got like a two-part series, and the first one you sort of follow her day. So she's obviously showing you like what she does, and she doesn't like she was whoever knows her story obviously started her brand in her 50s after a divorce and has a
Mhm.
child probably from that previous marriage, but now, and I think she's in her 80s, but she looks amazing.
Wild.
um
Yeah.
yeah, her day, like same as yourself, she's like a morning person, gets up at 5, has her Pilates and her green juice and starts the day that way. But she actually has like she's pretty much getting up and going through. She's got someone there to help her with the Pilates. She's got someone sitting doing her makeup and her hair. She actually gets someone to drive her into New York because she doesn't, while she's driving, she's doing all the other important work and things like that. So she's
Yeah.
delegating all the parts of her time that, she doesn't have to do, I suppose, that frees her up to do all
Yeah.
the other cool like Martha Stewart things. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was really great.
The,
I've watched some really cool ones.
I love that. And I love having this conversation too, because I feel like there's a weird intersection, and maybe you don't experience this as much as I feel like I have, but there are a lot of writers who seem to bristle at the idea of having like a house cleaner or something like that, or whatever, like someone doing your hair, someone picking your clothes, whatever it might be. Like there are people who seem to bristle at that like the suffering artist uh, archetype is really weird, and it's so alive and well in the world that I live in that sometimes I'm scared to talk about these things, and yet it's just a natural consequence of doing great work. And nobody
Mm,
actually wants me to wash my dishes. They want me to write more books. But right now, it's a necessity
mm.
that I wash my dishes because otherwise, the family's going to be angry at me and no one wants to eat on dirty plates.
Yeah, that's it. Well, it's like the whole, you're talking about Steve Jobs before and
Yeah.
did the whole wardrobe thing, black or
Yes.
just plain
Black,
colors.
black turtleneck, black
Yeah,
jeans.
you
Yes,
could
exactly. Take the
save
choice away.
save the yeah, exactly, save that. It's the same applying it to time. He's just,
Yeah.
keeping his choices
Yeah.
freed up as well. So, yeah.
Yeah. So, in your writing, you talked about doing the rapid release thing. You succeeded in doing 3 books on the rapid release schedule. Is that right?
No, no, I've
No.
only one, and I haven't.
Okay.
I didn't succeed at all. It was an absolute bomb because I haven't I haven't released any.
Oh, okay.
But I can look back at that year, and like I said, I can tell why. It might have worked had I been in a normal routine, had I
Mhm.
not been changing my day, like my world's not changing every minute of every day because we're moving across the country,
Right.
traveling and stuff like that. So.
Yeah.
It was a bit the goal was fine, I guess, but the situation
Sure.
wasn't. So I'm happy that I'm still going to be able to release one women's fiction in the next couple of months, and I will look at that as a win. But
Yeah.
again, lots of lessons learned from that. It
Sure.
was an experiment just to see if I could
Yeah.
be that faster writer.
Yeah. Well, so I have a book that's supposed to come out in February, at the beginning of February, and I'm not going to hit that deadline. I know because I am not even finished with the outline yet. Um, and no matter how fast I work, I'm not going to be able to change an outline into a fully written book that's beta read and comfortably ready
Yeah.
to publish that quickly. I would love to say that I could. I can work fairly quickly. I've learned that, but not that fast. So I beat the deadline for book 2 and book 3. But by the time I got to book 4, there were so many different things on my plate that I was just like, I kept having days where I wasn't writing. And it's not great, but it's just a fact. And so here I am, and I'm not going to make the deadline for book 4. And that's been really tough. I also hate how few sales I have on Amazon. I can do fairly well on the direct sales through different channels, but Amazon is tough. What's your experience there?
I don't sell on Amazon at
You
all,
don't.
honestly.
Okay.
My stuff
Oh,
is
they're
there, but I'm
listed.
not
Okay.
selling. Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't seem to make sales through there. In the beginning, in the past, I have, but I'm
Yeah.
more through Ingram Spark is where I make my sales or
Oh,
direct
nice.
as well.
Okay.
Yeah. So
So do you
last year
make your
I
books
took
returnable then, or
no,
you don't? Okay.
no, no, no. It's ticked as like non-returnable on
Gotcha. Okay.
Ingram, but
Hmm.
I had to be honest, I don't. I look at what I'm doing from a marketing perspective and actually from a sales perspective, and I have not apart from in the last 6 months, I have not actively been trying to sell my work
Yeah.
at all. And
Okay.
as I said, from the whole traveling experience in the
Right.
caravan was
Yeah.
was a thing. Had all this stock that I had to leave behind because obviously we're in a
Sure.
caravan for like
Yeah.
there's not a lot of room. I couldn't sell sort of print books from there.
Yeah.
My plan was kind of to do more in-person kind of speaking and stuff like that, but not knowing where we were going, we didn't really have a set routine. It was just as I said,
Yeah.
the situation was against me at the start. So when we returned
Sure.
back home, July, then I sort of made well, what do you call it? Like a conscious decision to start applying
Yeah.
myself to sell my books. Now I'm talking about I've got two nonfiction works, and I've got those out as ebook, audio, and print format. So it was more like the print stock, and we've sort of had a conversation about this, but thought in my last job as a commercial technical script writer, and I used to write like e-learning
Hmm.
modules for like the mining companies and stuff like that. Anyway, we what I was actually really good at, which wasn't it was part of my job, but it wasn't my main
Yeah.
job, was rounding up the projects because we used to work on like 10 to 15 projects at a time. It was quite
Yeah.
fast paced. And you would be chasing up clients to be like, where are you at? Where are you at with this project
Yeah.
and stuff like that. And I was like a bloodhound. I was so good at phoning up, and my project manager loved me because I'm effectively doing his job,
Yeah.
like managing all the projects and things like that. But yeah, I was good at chasing people up, and like yourself, cold calling. I used to have a job when I was 16, cold calling around
Oh, yeah.
houses, selling gas and electricity, as a
Oh, I
young 16
love it.
kid in Scotland. I know. It was a
Yeah.
fun time. Fun time. I don't think you could
Yeah.
do that sort of stuff now, but they'd probably get, I don't know,
Yeah.
snaffled into someone's house.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so I knew that this was a strength of mine. I'm quite happy to call people up on the phone and talk to them. So
Hmm.
I've been targeting libraries around Western Australia, and only Western Australia, which is where I
Awesome.
reside,
Right.
to let them know I've got these two books, I think they'd be good for the list. But first off, I was sort of emailing them first and then following up with a
Hmm.
phone call. And it feels like a snail's pace
Oh, it's
because,
awful.
it's like
Yeah.
one library at a time. Should
Yeah.
I be thinking more on a grander scale here? Should I be
Right.
thinking of a company that might just take out a big bunch of my books? But I've yet to have that thought. But I thought
Yeah.
this feels productive to me. And it feels
Yeah.
like, and I've made some sales through it and direct,
Yep.
so I get the most money.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've slowly been proceeding that way, mainly with
That's great.
sales, and I prefer that because when I get the royalties through the third party platforms, and they're like nowhere near as much as when you're
No,
obviously selling
I
direct.
know.
So,
I know.
but so far Amazon is not working for me. I
Yeah.
haven't gone down the advertising route yet because I don't know what I'm doing, so I need to
Hmm.
kind of get an education around that first before I'm going to put any
Yeah.
money behind it for sure.
I did a little bit where I set a pretty low bid, and I sold zero books from any dollars that I spent on Amazon. So I was like, well, that's not great because I mean I again I don't sell a ton of books, um, uh, even through Facebook advertising, enough that I stay in the game, But it's always like, oh, I lost a little bit of money here, lost a little bit of money there, tweak the ad, kind of change things up, see what happens. But like you, I actually I did a series on my podcast for libraries, and it was probably more applicable to Canada and the United States. I wouldn't even understand how the library systems in Australia work, but um, that was a lot of fun. That's actually how I ended up having Joanna on my podcast, Joanna Penn,
Mhm.
is that she had interviewed a guy, I'm forgetting his last name off the top of my head, Eric Simmons. Um, he was on my podcast after I heard his interview on her podcast about getting into libraries, and that just like lit a fire under me. And so my books are in libraries across the states.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, it's so difficult to do that process. And I think what was most disheartening for me was that librarians can actually be kind of, I hate to say this, and I don't know, this has just been my experience. So other people may have different experiences, but they can be kind of snooty. Like you go in and you
Mm.
say, I have a self-published book, and they're like, well, we actually only carry books from the big five. And I was like, really? That doesn't make sense to me. That is so strange. I can understand. I can straw man the other side and say there are so many self-published books that are of questionable quality that you have to sort of be wary of self-publishing. But at the same time, there's got to be a third way, not just carrying the big five. Did you run into
Mm.
any of that with libraries? You said it was a snail's pace, but has it mostly been positive, or have you ran into any
Yeah,
maybe
pretty
undue
much.
judgment?
I guess is there a reason that you're going into libraries to say I've self-published this book, or it's just part of your statement sort of thing?
Um, well, so when I would go in to pitch them to buy my book, I would be like, I am an author. I'm a local author. I wrote this novel. It's based in Omaha. And they'd be like, oh, what press is it with? And I'm like, it's, Create Collaborate Press. Oh, I haven't heard of that. Whose is that? Well, it's my personal press. Oh, so you're
Mm.
self-published. Yes, I'm self-published. We don't carry self-published books. And you're like, oh, okay.
Well,
So it's,
I haven't gone in directly like I do everything over the phone because obviously
sure.
everything's like miles away from here. And I've just,
Yeah.
and I email first So I've got like this database that I've built through obviously,
Okay.
email lists. And it's actually what's funny is it's given me an education because, in Australia, there's you have like the city of I'll just say Joondalup, which is close to me. And then under that city of Joondalup, there's about three libraries that come under that. And
Okay.
so there's no point in like cold calling around all those libraries because they're all connected to just the city. So I kind
Okay.
of have been grouping those together. So I've been learning that. But the way that libraries buy, especially in Australia, is very different. I have gone up to local libraries with one of these little square readers and they've paid with a credit card.
Really?
I've had them, yeah, yeah, not many, but I've had them come through my website and bought from me direct. A lot of
Wow.
them go through third-party distributors. So they've gave me the names of those, and I have got in touch with them, and then I appear on their lists. Um, yeah, I haven't received money from them, and I feel like people have bought from it. So I don't know how
Mm.
they work, whether they just put up my book from the like Ingram Spark or something, and people go through there. I'm not sure entirely how they work. So yeah, it's interesting to find out how they buy, and obviously they
Mm.
get allocated specific monies and all that sort of thing. And my reasoning for doing libraries and targeting them was, I don't know if the US have got this, but here in Australia we have something called ELP, ELP and ALP. It's educational lending rights and
Okay.
digital lending rights. So if you're an author in Australia and your book is in public libraries and in educational libraries and things like that, if you put in a form at the end of each year, financial year or something like that, you get a royalty payment for every where your books are at all
Oh,
across the
wow.
state. Which libraries? Yeah, they've actually started to roll this in for digital lending rights for ebooks and audiobooks, which is fantastic because your book's in a library and someone's that's it's people are taking it. That's effectively sales that you're losing out on.
Yeah.
So
That's
yeah,
cool.
have you heard of that in the US or they don't do that?
We don't do anything like that. The closest that we have to it is we've got several different digital resources. One is called Libby, and Libby
Mm,
people the library actually purchases a copy of the book, the ebook or the audiobook, and then it's in their catalog for a set period of time. I can't tell you off the top of my head how many years, but they own it for a number of years. Um, and during that whole time that Libby does it, you get credit for the one purchase. It is at two times the cost for digital books. So, like an ebook or an audiobook, if you list the retail as 19.99, then they purchase it for $40, and then you get your
mm,
royalty based on that, which is a really small amount. So it's not great. And then the other system we have is called Hoopla, and Hoopla is pay per checkout. So your book is available to any library if it's in the Hoopla database, and every time somebody checks it out, you get a small royalty payment. But for example, with Hoopla, my royalties last month were like $60, which is a
mm.
really small amount. But people are listening, people are checking out the book and finding it, and
Yeah,
then
well
my
that's it.
thought is like from there, maybe they go and they buy the hard copy of the book if they like it enough.
Yeah, yeah,
So
absolutely. I've heard of those two sort of platforms, and I think
yeah,
with what they couldn't decide with like the digital lending rights here is just obviously like you said with Libby they buy like the license they buy the sort of digital file or whatever, but the amount of times, especially this came up because of COVID and the digital reading went up a notch because nobody could obviously were going to the shops and buying print
yes,
and things like
yeah,
that. Then the Australian Society of Authors is fantastic here and they campaign for authors' rights all the time. So this was their
yeah.
fight, and this is what they've succeeded with to get authors payments for the money that they're losing for people borrowing their digital copies through libraries. So
Mhm.
that's yet to roll out what people get. But I've heard when this time of year comes around and people put in for their ELR and PLR payments, some of the authors, fair enough, they're probably established and have got a few books behind them, but they reckon that makes up a good chunk of their income, like a big,
Wow,
big beefy bit of money
that's
that comes
amazing.
in that helps. Yeah. So my thinking is if I can get enough of my books into libraries and then I can put in this payment like
That's a
halfway through the
fantastic
year, I can
incentive.
get it. And I wouldn't bother going at the moment because I've got the two nonfiction books in what I believe is like a 4 or 5 book series,
Mhm.
author linings. It's like a Non-fiction, through lived experience,
Hmm.
topics and things like that. These books are what I call short non-fiction. So a bit like
Yeah.
your marketing mindset book, they're about the same
Yeah.
size. They're quite small, short, to the point.
Hmm.
I don't waffle at all. And so I know that these books, apart from being together, in the end, I'm going to put them into one big book. So it's like a big fat book. Then I would probably go to the bookstores with that because that will be visible. My little books at the moment, they're not going to be visible on a bookshelf to anybody and they'll just get
Yeah.
lost. So pitching bookshops at the moment is probably not part of, well, it's not part of my like non-fiction marketing strategy. So still
Yeah.
plowing on with the libraries, but I think that I need to think of something I'm good at or how I
Yeah.
can make a bulk sale on a grander scale than me just because it's time
Yeah.
consuming sort of going around one at a time, each library. And I haven't even quite hit the end of like Western Australia, and then I've got all the other states
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
go. But
That's
it's also
I'm
building up connection with the librarians too. And yes, I
that's right.
have to, and in a long-winded answer to your question, have came up against a couple of snooties that have sort of just made a
Okay.
comment about self-publishing, but nowhere on my email. I
That's
say who
good.
I am, what the books are about, where they can get them, and how honored I would be for them to be found, as a local author, for them
Yeah.
to be found in my libraries to
Yeah.
help their patrons, and that it's finding the benefits of my books for but there is a lot of like I've more so than snooties. I've met librarians who want to help you and campaign for you
That's
and
so
are
cool.
really excited for you. Yeah. And I've had some opportunities come out through doing that. I'm actually speaking at a literary festival in March from making these cold calls round. The women sort of brought up this. And so from
Okay.
that I've got a speaking gig out of it and then something else. So from making these little calls, then there's other opportunities that arise as well.
Yeah. That's really cool. I love the incentives behind the library system there. It encourages you to do that more. And I think that I guess I can't think of all of like the economic I can't think of the word I'm looking for here, but like the consequences of it necessarily. But it sounds like such a perfect way to drive people to use the library more. I always feel a little bit guilty because what I do more often than not, for example, I'm reading The Running Grave by Robert Galbraith, aka J.K. Rowling, right now, and I have the audiobook through my library, and so I checked out the physical book from my local library and then the audiobook from the Omaha library, and I paired them together. Helps me read faster, retain better. So I do that a lot. And I didn't pay for either of those. And part of me, like, I feel guilty telling people that I do that because I'm like, I'm not supporting the literary community. Sometimes I feel like
Hmm.
a snake chasing its own tail, though. Like I'm going to devour myself. If I have to pay for every book that I read, there's so much other stuff that I could not do. I'm conflicted a little bit in that way. Your library system somewhat alleviates that pain, at
Yeah.
least for
But then you're
Australians.
saying that you've not bought that book, but then you've just mentioned it and you've just told me about it. So
Yeah,
if it's, if you raved about it to someone else, then effectively you've maybe sold that book on to someone else. I think there's other ways that you can kind of help
yeah,
people without kind of buying the book. But
very
that's
true,
never crossed
very
my
true.
mind, like going through the libraries to me. I mean, I actually use them as an office. Like I go there to
Oh, I
do my
love them.
writing and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
And yeah, it's a source of inspiration for me. It's great. They are advocates for authors, and it's our mecca, isn't it? It's
yeah.
just
It
wherever we want to
is.
be. And librarians are great, and they're so good. And I don't think, I mean, I guess as I said, if our authors here are getting compensated for books that are getting borrowed for the library, so I guess I've never really had that thought that I'm cheating an author out of their book, but. Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. So I do want to start looking at wrapping up, but before we do that, talk
Yep.
about the books that you've written in a little bit more detail. So you said you envision it, and I apologize. I think you said a four-book series, but now I'm second guessing the
Yeah,
numbers.
well, these two non-fiction books. So
Mhm.
I, much like yourself, fiction all the way. I started out writing children's and YA fiction, and I almost feel that it's not because someone told me to, but I went to a oh, I don't know if you've got them in the US, but it was a psychic meeting once. It's a psychic church. And so a bunch of people go
Okay.
there and there's a medium and you may or may not get a reading. And I was only oh gosh, I was quite young, and my sister was really into this sort of stuff. So I remember
Yeah.
we'd had a big night out, and I kind of went along a bit hungover, and I just went because they were kind of
Yeah.
going. So I was sort of slumped in my seat, and this woman's, you picked me, and I see you surrounded by children's books, and I was like, no, I don't think
Wow.
so.
That's
Yeah,
funny.
I said it's probably her next to me and her on the other side because they're both in childcare. That's maybe what's coming through, Ian.
Yeah.
And then I never thought much about that for about many years later. I went into the children's fiction genre and I kind of started out there. And it's just been through taking my writing seriously
Mm.
by taking higher education and things like that. That the first in this nonfiction series that came out, and I never ever planned to write nonfiction books at all. It's just fiction I
Yeah.
want to write. Love that. But from lived experience, these books kind of came out, and I just felt like I had something to say or something to share. So
Yeah.
I set out after my uni degree freelance writing, and
Hmm.
this the first in the series is called Freelance Writing: Quick Tips for Fast Success, and it's kind of like what I describe as a flip book. There's obviously
Hmm.
categories, but it's more about freelance business startups, so business
Cool.
values, rates of pay, registering your business, that sort of thing.
Okay.
But the tips in it is like 60 plus quick tips, and you can just sort of flip
Cool.
ahead, tip number
Yeah.
60, whatever, that kind of thing. And it's tiny, it's only like, I
Yeah.
think it's about 7,000 words. So you can read it in an hour,
Oh,
and
that's
it's
great.
like to the point and good. And I've had some good reviews to say, there's
Yeah.
no fluff in this book. It's just to the point.
Right. I love
I
that.
think someone even, he left me a review saying, I'm so sick of writing, like reading bad books, and instead here's this book. And I just thought was that a positive
That's
review, or
awesome.
was it to the
Yeah.
point?
Right.
So yeah,
Yeah.
that was just a small book that kind of emerged, and then the next in the series is author fears and how to overcome them, and that has
Mm.
been from me, emerging as an author and putting my work out there for others to judge, and all the insecurities and things that have just absolutely overwhelmed me, avalanched me almost.
Hmm.
I've kind of put that into categories. There's physical fears, craft fears, confidence fears, all that sort of stuff around, feeling judged, self-doubt,
Mm.
unsupportive people as well. You do this sort of
Trouble.
career. No one sees what you're doing. You're kind of living
Yeah.
in your head. Like I've been saying to my folks for gosh, the last month, I'm all, still finishing my book, whatever. I wonder if they just sit thinking she's just sitting playing a game on her computer or something until there's something
Yeah.
finished that people can actually see that's
Yeah.
tangible. They don't get it if they're not creative. And
Right.
there can be a lot of stigma that comes with that. And I've
Yeah.
certainly gone through that in the years. So
Mm.
those sorts of things are all in that book. And the next in series is more like the organized author. So I've got my processes and my work flowing together and all that sort of thing. And I think that others might be able to benefit from that. And then I think the
Hmm.
final one is more like going to be like a performance speaking type style. So they will all join together. They just
Yeah.
come from me chasing this career and the things that I sort of come up against that I've not ever experienced before. That I effectively have got to just get through to get to the other side because I'm not going to stop wanting to be an author, having this
Right.
author career, getting to where I'm going to be. But these are the things that roadblocks, I guess. I hate that term as well, but they kind of
Yeah.
pop up and they can
Yeah.
easily stop someone in their tracks from going for this because it's like you're saying, it's that uncomfortableness, it's that horrible things. There's just millions of stuff, but
Yeah.
and then you almost think, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? If it feels
Absolutely.
so unearthly on whatever that world is, but there's a
Hmm.
reason. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a reason. So that's
There's
it.
they sound great. You and I are treading on a lot of the same territory in terms of like what we're trying to speak to in the author community. So I love that. And I need to put links. You sell them direct, you said, so it's easiest to put links to those books direct to your website, I'm assuming.
Yeah,
Okay,
so the
perfect.
hybridauthor.com.au/books or whatever is where you'll find everything. But yeah, hybridauthor.com.au is where the podcast is, the books are, and everything. And the reason that, I started Hybrid Author is because I have so many aspirations in different
Yeah,
genres and different ways of publishing. I had to find some sort of common denominator to be able to keep them all in the one place because I
yeah,
can't have two websites. And my
right.
name, I have pseudonyms. So I
Yeah.
can't have different social media sites. I
Yeah.
found that out quite quickly when we were
Yeah.
talking about time and kids and stuff. And I
Yeah.
needed this one thing that I could just go to and consult for everything I'm trying to do. So the hybrid author is
Yeah.
it. And it's funny how the term is coining off into all these different areas. Like
Right.
it's evolving every year. I'm sort of doing it and I'm meeting new people. And yeah, it's just got such a reach on it, I guess. Yeah.
It does, yeah. I mean, in some ways, I feel like you're very fortunate because it's a great term. It's memorable, it's short, it's easy, and it does have like just a large, inclusive kind of umbrella to it. So hybrid in the sense that you can be traditionally published and self-published, but hybrid in that you can have pseudonyms, you can be nonfiction, fiction, anything you
Yeah.
write can go under
And
that. I like that.
even writing styles, like I talked to an
Yeah.
Australian author and she was incorporating um into like prose,
Mhm.
like poetry and just mixing up writing styles as well. That was one.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's so interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. I seem to be incapable of writing a straightforward genre. So if I want to write mystery, then somehow I have to incorporate like elements of urban fantasy into it. And like, why do I do this to myself? It would be so much easier if I could just write a cozy. Come on, you know.
Yeah, I know, yeah. Oh,
Can't
you
do it.
are a hybrid author, Jodie,
Yeah,
100%.
I know, I know. Yeah, and the one comfort I take is knowing that other authors are all kind of doing this. It feels a bit like the experiment we're having as a society too, because I know Australia is not so different than the United States in terms of the races, the religions, the ethnicities, the cultures. All of those kind of things are like very melting pot in Australia as well as they are in the United States. And the more that you see that, the more you're like, oh, I can go to a restaurant that's Mexican Asian fusion. And
Yeah, it's
I
cool.
feel like that's happening with our writing as well, is that you're not seeing a ton of books that are just straight up one genre anymore.
Yeah, and I like that because,
I do too.
something cool and weird and beautiful can come out of that.
Absolutely. I wish we could talk longer. And I mean, I could talk longer, but I have the sense that you need to get to your day, to get to your kids, to get to your family. So I want to do this again soon. I am so glad that I got to have you on my podcast because the first time that you invited me to be on yours, you refused to reciprocate and be on mine. It wasn't the right time, like you said, but to share you with my audience is something that I'm really glad to do. From the first time that we met, and I don't even remember how we encountered each other, to be honest. Um, I've always thought that you excel at authenticity, and you said it at the beginning of the show that you don't know how to do it any different way, but it seems to be so ingrained in your DNA that you're almost like accidentally authentic. And the effect it has on me, and I think probably will my audience as well, is that I feel like you're a friend, even though I've only spoken to you a couple of times. So keep doing what you're doing because it just has this like incredibly comforting impact on me, and your trustworthiness is through the roof.
Oh, thank you. That's I'm
Yeah.
blushing. And back at
Yes.
you as well. I know
Thank you.
it's I wholeheartedly agree. Same though, I just feel like, you can meet people and just have that sort of connection where you're both
Yeah.
inspired by the same things or whatnot. But yeah, exactly. You sharing your vulnerability, I guess if that's the word, on
Yeah.
failures and succeeding and all the rest is I think what people will respond to, and especially in this world with dare I say it, AI rising, all of
Oh
this
man.
chat and things like that, and
Yeah.
everyone saying the human being human is going to probably be more important than anything.
Uh-huh.
But
Yeah.
yeah, this is me, this is it, and I can't, yeah, pretend to be otherwise. I think that's why I'm working out all the insecurities
Yeah.
before I put myself out there, because I
Right.
can't. They're all fake it till you make it. And it's like, oh, I find that really
Yeah.
hard, but
Don't know how to do it. Yes. Yes. I can
that's it.
be I
But
can
thank
be
you.
ignorant of what I don't know. But yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Thank
thank you
you,
so
Joanne.
much for having me on as well. It's been great.
Yeah, it has been. Thank you. Thank you for listening to TRBM. The theme music was provided by the ever-talented Christopher Talon. And hey, if you liked what you heard, share this show with other readers because what's the point of telling stories if nobody's listening? Calling all self-published authors. If you live in the United States and you've always wanted to see your books in bookstores, This may be the most important ad you'll hear in 2023. Listen carefully. No matter where you are in your publishing journey, it's not too early to position yourself to pursue brick and mortar bookstore distribution. But if you're a self-published author, you've probably heard getting your books in stores is next to impossible. That's no longer the case. For just $5, you'll receive a lifetime membership to the Self-Published Author Co-op. When you join, you'll have access to a members-only community with a detailed roadmap on how to get your books ready for bookstore distribution. Joining our community does not guarantee bookstore distribution, as there's a limited availability each month to be a featured author. And that's why the cost of a lifetime membership is less than a cup of coffee. Whether you're just about to publish your first book or you're selling thousands of copies a month, if you don't have your books in bookstores, the Self-Published Author Co-op is the easiest, most efficient way to get national distribution of your books. Click the link in the show notes to join now.